Hello, fellow travelers, and welcome to the Versus Stars podcast. How are my loyal listeners? Thank you for your continued support. And remember, click the subscribe button, everybody. This is an amazing episode because John Jackson Miller boards the mothership. You know him as the writer of your favorite Star Wars and Star Trek novels. He is now the writer of Star Trek, Strange New Worlds, The High Country. Come aboard as we go traversing the stars. Hello, Mr. Miller. Thank you so much for coming to the Versus Stars podcast.
It's my pleasure.
It's a great honor to talk with you, sir.
I'm glad to be here. It's my first podcast of the year and the first one where we're talking about the new book.
Oh, wow. I feel absolutely special then. So I always thought it was a question of inspiration. So what inspired your love of writing and who were your earliest influences?
Earliest influences. Well, that's hard to say. I mean, I had my mother was a grade school librarian, so she encouraged me to keep my comic books and keep them in order. My older sister was very much into pop culture at the time, and she made sure that I got everything. So, everything from, Star Wars and Monty Python and everything that was, becoming a thing in the 70s. She was into before I was into, and she introduced me to. So that's very cool too. And I guess I would say my dad, got me into an interest in science and how things work as well, because that's really kind of what he was. He was an electronics guy. And so is my son. So it kind of skipped a generation.
That is absolutely awesome. So you are the author of a soon to be released book from first the Star Trek franchise called The High Country. So how did you get involved writing Star Trek novels? Very cool. There it is. Is that
Strange New Worlds, The High Country? I received it just a couple of days ago.
Oh, that must be an awesome feeling for you.
It is. This particular book was originally going to come out in November, but we had this sort of domino effect due to the supply chain issues last fall and last summer, actually. I think we had just announced. I finished the novel first draft, or at least I can get into how we do the drafts and things later, but I finished the novel first week of April in 2022. Went and announced it, I think, the next week at Star Trek Mission Chicago, and then that's when we got the cover. And then I think it was 1 week after that, I'm at Indianapolis Comic-Con, having a really good day, signing books and everything. And then the word comes that, every book that was coming out has to be pushed forward. And so, the slot that Strange New Worlds had, went to a different book in November or in the fall, and everything just sort of cascaded forward. But I decided to try to make lemonade out of it, and that is how we got something kind of cool in this book. And I don't know if you have a question coming up about that or not, but I took the extra time to add maps to the book, and it is the first Star Trek novel to have planetary maps, as far as I know. And it is actually, I'll rephrase that. Not necessarily planetary maps, but wide area maps. There were city maps in A Stitch in Time, which was in 2000. And I'm sure somebody out in the hive mind can tell me when there's been other maps. Obviously, there have been maps in stellar cartography and Star Trek star charts and other things like that, showing planets and locations of things. It's just not necessarily in the tie-in fiction with the stories. Although even with stellar cartography, there is a non-fictional history book that comes with that product. But yeah, I looked at that additional time that we had, and I realized that I had this is a story that takes place entirely on one planet. It is the reverse of the very first Star Trek novel I did, which was called Takedown several years ago. I got to the end of that novel and I realized we don't set foot on a planet the entire book. It's entirely a naval yarn. And with this one, I was like, well, this is Strange New Worlds. I had just done a book called Die Standing, which was our discovery novel. That took place on several different worlds where I did some world building. But for this one, it was much more in depth, and it gave me a chance to use the characters in a different way than I had done in what is really kind of our proto Strange New Worlds first novel, and that was the Enterprise World book that I did, which was the Pike, the Anson Mount Pike. Actually Jeffrey Hunter turning into Anson Mount in that period there. That is during season 1 of Discovery, and I did that book in 2019, and now here coming out in 2023 instead of 2022. That novel, Enterprise War, once again, it is 90% in space, and maybe 85-90% in space, and for this one I was like, okay, I want to actually tell a story where it is one world but many different facets to it, many different types of environments in it, many different characters that have their own quests on the planet. And so I said, well, heck, I've got my maps here. And so I talked to a friend of mine, James Mishler, who designs maps for role-playing games. And he said, okay, here's how we can winnow this down. Because again, I had just scratchings all over the place. And so yeah, this is a cool thing. I had done a book for Star Wars called Star Wars Lost Tribe of the Sith, which was likewise about people stranded on a planet without the use of technology. And we put maps in that. And I think that's one of the reasons why that book is, I think, on its 19th printing. It is still is valued because people like being able to follow along. It's the whole Tolkien thing.
That sounds absolutely awesome. So the maps are planet specific, or are they looking at the Federation, the galaxy, and where everything fits at this moment?
Well, this isn't something where these are Elcar's style things. This is not the Federation's maps. This is not Starfleet's maps. These are the maps of the local population, which again is, as we'll see, all that our crew has to go on. And so I wanted to do that. We did them in a few different styles, so that it kind of goes. You're seeing what Pike is seeing, and I also was just kind of also looking at it and saying, to actually do something that looks like it would look on a Star Trek episode screen. That's going to require a much higher level of graphic design than I think, not only that I have skill wise, but also, I don't think you can do it in black and white. And that's what we got. If the book had taken another 6 months to come out, you would have seen me lobbying for color tip-in plates or something like that. But as it is, I figured, let's start slow here.
So when you're going from your imagination in writing the book on the planet to now you're mapping it, did things change how you thought about it once you're now putting it in a truly three-dimensional space like a map?
Well, the novel was completely done before we did before we actually really nailed down where everything was. But I had always mentally understood, okay, this is where all these characters are relative to one another. And we do that anyway. Even if it's aboard ship, we know that Spock is in sciences and Scotty's in engineering. We know these people are wherever they're supposed to be. And I don't want to sell this thing as if the book wouldn't work without the maps. It absolutely does. These are a bonus. But it's just one of those things where over the years, I have done a few of these things like this. My Star Wars Kenobi novel on StarWars.com. There are maps of everything that happened. the maps that I was using from Planet Tatooine were actually maps that were owned by Lucasfilm, and so all we had to do was just reproduce those maps and show where the events were for that. And then I also did that for another book called Knight Errant, where it was actually more important to show where the political boundaries were. And again, that was all just online. That wasn't in the book itself. And my thinking about this is eventually I would have released some sort of, my chicken scratching maps would have been out there because people would have wanted to see them. And I said, well, heck, let's put them together. So we did that. And yeah, what I have here, we have a number of quests in this book, a number of journeys, where the characters are piecing together the mystery of this very strange new world that they found, which has a kind of a lush and complicated history. And I always tell new writers, don't start with the world building. That comes later after you know what the book is about. This is a little different. There's a lot about why this planet is the way that it is relates to the larger themes that I'm going after in this book. And themes having to do with, I'm going to give it away. And so I have to not give it away, but let's just say, one of the things that I do in my Star Trek novels is I kind of try to take a look at either an episode in the past or several episodes, or even a class of episodes, a type of Star Trek episode, where I want to take it deeper and pull at the threads a little bit and see what kind of a story I can tell with it. So again, for example, my most recent released novel, which was the Star Trek Picard Rogue Elements novel. Well, that has a major role for the Iosians. Those were the gangsters from the Untouchables planet, literally using the Untouchables sets and the Untouchables costumes from Desilu in the original series. And I decided that I would follow them 125 years later, as we see in the book, and that gave me a chance to really think about what they would be like in the future, how they would have been changed by their interaction with the galaxy. And then also it tied into a theme of that work, which was the importance and power of books. And of course, books, it is the holy book in A Piece of the Action, that episode, that transforms that society. How is it possible that something like that could do that? And how would people react if they realized that book was one of a series, or that book wasn't telling everybody really how it was? What if there were missing pages from the book? And how that would influence their culture, and the individual characters. So I mean, it's just a lot of things where I was able to, get a lot of mileage out of looking at some of these things, and that is the case here too. There's a specific class of story that has to do with, well, I'll use the word displacement. People not being where they're supposed to be. That takes place in Star Trek, and certainly our main characters here are not where they are supposed to be. And we get to deal with a lot of interesting questions, and I found that they tied in as well with what I thought were interesting questions about the Prime Directive, which is at this point brand new in the continuity, because it was General Order number 1 for a long time, and we get, I think it flips to being Prime Directive right during season 1 of Strange New Worlds. I'm not sure exactly when it is. It's really close. And so, a lot of what's going on for the characters and in my book in the High Country is the characters happen to make some decisions that they haven't faced before. And I imagine that philosophy classes on Earth that hit people with conundrums are going to be very similar to what Starfleet is almost certainly teaching at the Academy, where they're hitting people with with conundrums having to do with the Prime Directive. Well, I mean, the Iosians themselves are a Prime Directive conundrum, because what do you do after that planet has already been influenced by our technology, and of course Captain Kirk does his own thing, but yeah, it worked out anyway. So yeah, these are all very long answers to very simple questions of where I come at these things, and I think yes, people will see that there are a couple of specific episodes of Star Trek that I am really riffing on, or really using as my springboard, where I'm saying, okay, yeah, that's good, but what's next? And what is the part that they couldn't show us in 42 and a half minutes? What comes along next? And those two episodes are actually spread in very different parts of the series or the franchise. So people will figure that out as they read.
So I know a question that the readers always have with books like this. The big one that they always go to is the word continuity.
Yeah.
Where does it fall in the continuity of season 1 of Strange New Worlds? Where does it fall in continuity of season 2 of Strange New Worlds? And how much are you in tune with where it fits?
Okay. This book takes place over a significant period of time. I can't say how much. I also will not say, where the beginning and the ending are. I will say, however, that the back cover has already made it quite clear that we have Hammer. And depending on how much of season 1 of Strange New Worlds you've seen, that tells you something about where at least the Hammer parts take place. So I really am reluctant to give the both bookends, but it will be anybody who picks up the physical book will see right away, because it has the historical thing. It'll say where it starts. I think it's also kind of obvious that because Hammer is on that back cover, and that's a very, very, very early scene in the book. That tells you at least where we're starting.
So once again, because there's a season 2 that we have not seen of Strange New Worlds, are you knowledgeable of what happens in season 2 to make sure you didn't step on any toes or contradict things that are going to happen later?
The way to put this is that I work with Kirsten Beyer, who's one of the executive producers of the TV show, who she guided me to what I could and couldn't do, and where was a good place to set things. It was she who suggested, yeah, let's see Samora Hammer, and so that sort of made me think, okay, yeah, all right, well here's how I'm going to set this up. And so yeah, I like Bruce Horak's rendition of that character. I wanted to do more with it, and they got the chance. So I definitely like an intelligence agent, I do not get into sources and methods. So it's usually about 10 years before I say, yes, I had the scripts, or no, I had the story Bible, or yeah, I had nothing. I don't know, I don't know what the actual contracts on these things say. Actually, I do know what they say. But I regardless of what they say, I very much try to keep close to the vest anything in terms of what's going to happen. I will say that we have had cases, because all of these streaming novels, whether it's Enterprise War or Die Standing or Rogue Elements or High Country, I've worked on all of them with Kirsten. And again, she's either in the writer's room or working, she's a co-creator of Picard. And so there have been cases where there's a significant case in Die Standing where the character of San, who appears in season 3 of Discovery, in a flashback to the mirror universe, a character in Emperor Georgiou's life. That character first appears in the novel weeks before that episode aired. And that is a cool kind of thing that we're able to do now, if the timing works out. But, I can tell you at the same time, it should be fairly obvious that I wrote the novel last year. And while I've been able to make some changes and tweaks and that sort of thing, it was certainly not the case in April, of 2022 that at my level, I knew, when season 2 would air or anything like that. Yeah, that's the sort of thing where it's decided on a much higher level, and that stuff is announced when it's announced by those folks.
So when you're writing a novel like this, once again, we're familiar with these characters through seeing them on the television,
right?
So when you're writing them, how difficult is it to match the voices to the characters with what you're hearing in your head and writing them down? And were there characters that, as you're writing them, you were kind of surprised that this character you found more entertaining to write than another, or something clicked better than you thought it was going to be with one or two of the characters?
Yeah, I think that I've tended to be over the years, because I've written so much tie-in work, and before that I was writing comics for Marvel. You tend to become a mimic, because what Tony Stark sounds like in the other comics. What various Star Wars characters sound like, and Star Trek likewise. The hardest thing to do is when you're following other authors who have I don't want to say non-player characters, that's not right, but the non-screen characters. So for example, my Prey trilogy, and also the Takedown novel, I use liberally a lot of characters from the Aventine that never appear on screen anywhere. I use a lot of characters that had been established in the other Splinter universe, if you want to call it that, or Splinter timeline, for Splinter novels, for Star Trek. Actually, I think the better term for those novels is the Pocket Universe. Because it all came from pocket books. That's what it ought to be called. But yeah, I think that's a little harder because often you have there's no voice. There's no voice that you've heard. Unless you're listening to them in audiobook form. And also, there weren't audiobooks for everything, around that time either. So that tends to be more difficult, especially if you've got multiple hands writing the character over the years. And so, I usually what I would do is I would, on those characters, I would look for a particular scene and say, okay, well, that's sort of the cadence of their speech, the sound that I want them to so that at least the people who've read the books before will at least say, oh, well, that person talked like that in this scene back here. But otherwise, no, I mean, I hear the characters in my head. We've got significant roles for Pike, Spock, number one, Uhura, Lon, and of course Hammer. The best compliment that I can ever get as far as dialogue is concerned is a couple of people have read the back cover that has Hammer's dialogue in it and said you really captured that character. That's wonderful, and when it happens, we owe that to the people who created the characters as actors, because I'm drafting on their performance there. Although sometimes there are cases where I haven't heard those characters yet either. A very nice compliment came when I did the novel Star Wars: A New Dawn, which was the Rebels TV show prequel. That actually that novel came out a month before the series aired, and the actress Vanessa Marshall, who played Hera, the one of the main leads in that series, let me know that she loved my impression of her character, and that she used the book as well to inform her own performance. And I'm just delighted for that, because if we got anywhere close, it wasn't, because we had something to draw upon. That was me working with the producers of the show, to try to capture what we thought that character's voice would be like.
Well, I think another challenge on writing a book based on a show is the idea of giving a character a proper arc and also
Yeah.
growing a character. Is there an intimidation factor in deciding how you're going to grow a character that has come from a TV show? You know what I'm saying? Because once
Yeah.
again, you got to determine how to grow them, change them without
Right.
losing what is the essence of your this known character.
Well, every character has to have an arc and a story, and you'd like to see them all changed. And it's not the case that every, certainly, life and death are off the table. So what you do is you want to try to come up with something that's different for each character. In this book, Uhura is young, this is really her first lengthy away mission, and of course they're not really called away missions yet. But this is putting this character into a situation for an extended period of time that she's not accustomed to. So she has a much more literal challenge that she's dealing with. Pike. Pike is not somebody who's going to change his attitude about the universe from the beginning to the end of the book necessarily. But he's got things that he cares about, and characters that he cares about. And in this book, he has to, sort of, make a decision how, exactly how all in am I going to go to help the people that I need to help, to fix the thing that I might have broken, and is it okay for me to break something else in order to fix it? And so everybody's got their own challenges that they're working through. Spock has a very interesting arc. Una as well. It's very different stories that each of these characters have in this book, and getting it to work together and wrap up. One of the interesting things about this novel is it is my longest yet. It is slightly longer than the Rogue Elements book, and it needs to be, because there are these big journeys that are taking place here, both physical and emotional. And I also, this is unlike Rogue Elements, which was entirely in the first person, or not first person, but rather it was entirely one point of view character, which was Rios through the whole book, with the exception of the epilogue. Here, we do go back and forth between, the various different quests. But everything is constantly going forward. And as far as everybody getting closure, I used to subscribe to the notion of, end the book quickly. My very first novel, I really ran out of time. This wasn't for Star Trek. This was a different franchise. And I really ran out of time. And I decided I would wrap all the threads up very quickly, and get out. And there's a school that says that you do that, particularly in movies, so that you don't have the hour and a half goodbye scene. Lord of the Rings, part 3, we might talk about. But at the same time, I look at it and say, we've spent all this time with these characters. After 125,000 words, you can spare a chapter apiece for every group of characters, for every major character, I think,
Mm.
and show where they're at, and give them all an ending. The reader has earned that by that point, and that is one of the nice things about the hardcovers. And again, this is entirely like the maps. It was entirely something that I've just decided to do with these last two books, this one and Rogue Elements. Is my feeling is, if as long as we're doing hardcovers, we might as well make them big books, epics, longer if we can. Obviously every story is as long as it is, but I purposefully set out here to write a kind of story that would be deserving of, both the $25 and also the extra space.
Yeah, I think one of the cool thing is, as I was reading the summary, it states that Pike gets to live his dream to be almost like a cowboy on this planet, and kind of my brain went back to Star Trek Generations with Kirk on the horse, and you had Picard on the horse. What does that suggest about Pike, that excitement about wanting to live like the old West cowboy? What does that say about his personality, and maybe captains in general, that they all seem to have a shared love of riding horses?
Well, this is the thing: is either it's horses in the Old West, or it's the British Navy, the Age of Sail. There's that sort of thing that's going on with all these characters, and obviously in Pike's case, that was something that was already in the character before, and where he grew up and everything. There's definitely an element in all of Star Trek where, and again, let's be honest, in the very beginning, it was the cheap thing to do, because we have a set over here that looks like the OK Corral, and we have a set over here, and it just so happened that in the 1960s, a science fiction show was really an aberration. Everything was a Western. Everything was a horse opera. But Star Trek was described as Wagon Train to the Stars when it was originally pitched. And there is that sort of notion of that journey of the different town every week, the different, and a different planet every week, different town every week. There's not a lot of distinction there. When you come to it's just the vehicles that are different, and the notion that it's pioneering, but I also, and this book does get into the appeal to sort of that earlier time, the back to nature thing. There's a character in Discovery that is described as coming from a Luddite colony, and there's very clearly a thread of that back in the original series too. The folks that are back to nature kind of folks, and so there's that tension that's there between modernism and the past, and that is right here in this book.
So which character has like the worst time of it? Let's put it that way.
Well, you always want to give a character something that will really challenge them, and Uhura is pretty much the youngest character, the greenest new recruit, and the situation her character is in is very challenging indeed, and so it's an important. I think that this I wrote this to be an important story in her growth, or in the character's already. We know how the character turns out. So this is something where it feels like, okay, yeah, an adventure like this would have been very formative for her. And again, I don't want to get into it too much, but these are four very different. When we talk about Pike and Spock and number one and Uhura, they're in four very different situations that just that those four are in.
Now, I think, and I may be wrong, but in my opinion, there's two major approach or different approaches to how people write Spock. Either Spock the Vulcan, no emotions, or sort of the Abrams Vulcans have a lot of emotions. They're very tightly restrained and controlled. When you're approaching Spock as the writer, which tack do you take? They're the fully logical, or it's kind of like the Abrams version of Spock, which is, like I said, when he said we have deep emotion, but we keep them tightly controlled with our logic.
A lot of it has to do with the how the character is what the character is being put through in the book. What are the influences? Who is trying to evoke a response from the character. And in some cases, I mean, you'll write up a story and you'll say, okay, well, this is a story where very seriously it plugs into, Spock's issues with his relationship with his parents, or his dual birthright, or a struggle to reconcile different paths for him. And then there are stories where that that's always part of the character, but we need Spock to be Spock, and we need Spock to be making some Spock like some surmises and estimations and theories and decisions, and so I would say that I do not put him through the ringer in this book nearly to the degree that we did in Enterprise War, which clearly that book, part of the DNA of it was we were bringing him to where we meet him in Discovery. So the Red Angel sequence is in Enterprise War, and we've already made his life very hard by the time he gets to that moment. So yeah, I mean, you decide every book, if you're writing a book with Data in it, either it's something where Data's personal issues are going to be close to the fore, or they're going to be in the background. They're always there, but they inform things rather than drive the action.
So another cool thing about the book that I read about is that there's also an audiobook that's already been put together for it. So can you tell us who's providing the voice and what does that add to the experience?
That's Robert Petkoff, and I had the wonderful experience this December. I did an hour on Wisconsin Public Radio, and people just need to go to WPR.org and search John Jackson Miller. They will find that hour and all my previous hours. But with Robert Petkoff and January Lavoie, and they are the two narrators who have done the Star Wars. Well, January's also done Star Wars for me, for my characters. But they've done. January narrated the Die Standing novel, and Robert has performed everything else. And that's one of the fun things that we get into in that discussion is this narrating or is this actually performance? And it really is a performance because they're doing the voices of dozens of different voices. And one of the things that we do is before every book, I work with Karen Perlman, who is a producer of the audiobooks. I provide both pronunciations for the things that are new. I point her to where she can find in the series certain characters that might be extremely minor, that we can get audio clips from. And then what I do is I sort of say, hey, look, this is the way that I want this character to sound. And Robert takes from that a bit of direction. So for example, with Rogue Elements, and again we've seen we know Rios from Picard, I had said, look, for him at this stage of his career, which we have not seen, in Rogue Elements, I want Cristobal Rios to basically have two gears, which is disinterest and disgust. He's either I can't believe I'm dealing with these people, or he's please leave. He's in one of these things or another, because this is the phrase where he's getting he must at some point get so disgusted with other people that he decides to just clone his himself for his crew, and so that's in there. And I do that with the other characters that I suggest as well. I say this is who this person should sound like, but this person has to have the ability in their voice to go to a second gear, and the talent that these people have, both actors in their own right. January is able to do in Die Standing both Giorgio the Emperor and Giorgio the Captain, and make them sound different while being the same person in conversation with one another, which is something that I arrange in the book. In the case of Rios and his holographic doppelgangers, Petkoff is able to capture the fact that it's not this is not a character with a Scottish accent. It's Rios's idea of a character with a Scottish accent. So it's not exactly exact in these cases. And so yeah, I mean, when I created a new character, there's a major figure here where in Strange New Worlds, the High Country, where I said, okay, I'm looking for basically Max von Sydow in the movie 3 Days of the Condor, where he plays the wonderful assassin Jobert, where he is just he's very matter of fact about the murderous business that we find ourselves in, but he's also very sort of he's very intellectual and philosophical about how he approaches things, and yet at the same time he can turn into Ming the Merciless if he needs to. So I don't always do that sort of mental casting for voices, but it is helpful to the audiobook readers to sort of have at least a star to navigate by.
So when can the readers get High Country?
Okay, this book is available for pre-order now, and if folks go to farawaypress.com, there's both a link to go to my big list of pre-order links, and also there's a link there to order or pre-order signed copies from me. February 21st is when it finally comes out. It will be in hardcover, in ebook, and in audiobook. And a great thing about that audiobook is, and this actually came from an idea from Robert in January after we did that interview for WPR. They said, you can actually provide the maps to the audiobook readers. It is done. There is like an extras thing where you can download the maps, and hopefully people will not rush through them all. They'll just, every section has its own map, and you go one at a time. I feel like it should be like one of those kids film strips back there. Where it's like, turn to the next page now. Turn to the next map now, with a little ding, a little bell going off. But yeah, it's February 21st, and we are looking to try to have this book launch as big as we can. This is February is a double-edged sword. It is both a terrible time to release a book, in the sense that I can't really travel a whole lot, although it turns out I am going to be traveling a whole lot to support it. But at the same time, there's a lot less in the stores in terms of big new launches, particularly from other science fiction franchises. The chance of a significant launch is higher. February was when the first Picard novel by Una McCormick came out, and that book made the Publishers Weekly hardcover bestseller list. It made it onto that list in part because this is not when James Patterson decides to dump his new novel or John Grisham or whoever. That just doesn't tend to happen in February. And so I like the odds here of a nice strong release.
Fantastic. Mr. Miller, it's been an absolute honor to speak with you, sir. I hope High Country does fantastically well, and I hope our listeners all buy it. So thank you so much.
All right, thanks very much, and live long and prosper. Thank you.